Saludos desde el infierno. Welcome to the Bitchuation Room on a Tuesday. A Tuesday in hell. Yes, a Tuesday, as You Don't Like My Music on YouTube says, another day in the American neo-fascist junta. Yes, and we're gonna, you know what, guys? We're gonna podcast through it. We're just gonna pod through it, and it'll be fine, you know? Obviously, we're gonna have to do a little bit more, but so long as you're here, thank you for being here. Thank you for pressing play. Thank you for all of your support. Thanks for sharing and liking the stream and doing all the things, for touching all the buttons, for ringing all the bells, and so on and so forth. You know, I'm facetious about potting through it. There are people who are taking real action. Luckily for me, we have a union organizer and a comedian named Nato Green on the show, as well as mayoral candidate and state assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, who's going to be joining me on quite an interesting day in New York City news, as Eric Adams's little plea to the, Sun King has borne him some pardons, has allowed his charges to be dismissed for now. So we will talk to Zohran all about not only his campaign, his hope for New York, but also his opposition. The current mayor who refuses to resign in shame under his bribery charges. So stay tuned for that. We're also going to round out with a little look at how the Democrats are doing. Not all of them, but some of them, namely the leaders, not mounting very much of a fight in this constitutional crisis / coup / natural conclusion of a corrupt political system where billionaires were allowed to buy politicians. This is really just the ultimate conclusion. This is the final stage, the cancer done metastasized. It's a wrap. Anyway, again, trying to stay positive. Thank you so much again for your support. Remember that this is only a third of the Bitchuation Room. The other 2/3 happen on Wednesdays and Fridays. Wednesdays is our bonus episode. Last week we had Robin D.G. Kelly on. I hope those of you who are patrones or members on YouTube or Twitch enjoyed that conversation. I always love speaking with Robin, Professor Kelly, I'm sorry. So become a member or a patron on Patreon on patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Support this show. $2, $5 a month, $10 a month gets you that shout out during the fart song. You get perks like 20% off of merch at bitchuationroom.com. You get access to our Ask Me Anythings, which we're going to do one this Friday for Valentine's Day. That's right. Before you go out / stay in and cry, I'm going to be doing a little Ask Me Anything after Friday's show. So send your questions in the Patreon inbox or to bishiation@gmail.com. And it should be available to also members on YouTube as well as the patrones. So excited for your questions. Excited to just sort of like throw down in depth. Don't ask me why there are no more fun segments on Wednesdays. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about the 525-pound bear who hid out in a basement in Pasadena to avoid the wildfires. That was a very heartwarming story, and I feel like we need to talk about it. But for now, why don't we talk about one more plug, which is that I'm going to be in, speaking of Pasadena, I'm going to be hiding out like a bear in the comedy club known as the Ice House on Wednesday, February 19th at 7:30 p.m., with Gareth Reynolds of the Dollar Podcast headlining, in addition to comedian Jenny Yang, Solomon Giorgio, and of course, my husband, Matt Lieb. Get tickets, francescafiorentini.com, or they should be in the description wherever you are ingesting this content. Also, final announcement, Tuesday, Thursdays, I got a new show on Zateo, guys. It's called America Unhinged. I co-host it with Wajahat Ali. We're taking you through the first 100 days of the second Trump administration, and boy, oh boy, what days they are. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And with that, guys, everybody get your bitch caps on. This is What Are You Bitching About? Over the weekend, I decided to cash in and go on MSNBC. No, I was invited to go on MSNBC on Ayman Mohadin's show. He's got, I think, a 2-hour show Saturdays and Sundays. And he's someone who has been speaking out about Palestinian human rights. He's been talking about it under Biden, obviously now under Trump. And he pointed out, and I think a brilliant monologue, something that a lot of us have been saying, which is that, yes, what Donald Trump has been doing is demonstrably worse than what Joe Biden has been doing when it comes to Gazans, saying we're going to make it the Riviera of the Middle East. Palestinians will no longer live there. Of course, they can't return, but it's going to be a beautiful real estate opportunity. They can't go back. We're going to put them in, little shanty towns. He didn't say that word, but, we assume. And yes, it is worse. It is bad. It is, however, not a new plan. And Ayman brought a little bit of receipts on Saturday that I wanted to remind y'all of.
One part of Trump's rhetoric that is rightfully causing outrage is his insistence that expelled Palestinians will need to be relocated to Egypt and Jordan. And both Egypt and Jordan have outright rejected that. But take a look at this Associated Press report about Egypt's refusal to participate in this ethnic cleansing. It quotes a Western diplomat who said Egypt rejected similar proposals from the Biden administration and European countries early in the war. The earlier proposals, the ones from the Biden administration, were broached privately while Trump announced his plan at a White House press conference. So you're hearing it there pretty clearly. The Biden administration proposed the same thing. They just did it quietly.
Right. They did it quietly. They did it with a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of, this is a tragedy and how terrible, and every loss of life is is awful. But that ultimately the Biden administration, behind the backs of the American people, and, not unbeknownst, there was reporting on this, was basically also trying to, ethnically cleansed 2.3 million Palestinians from Gaza and put them into shanty towns in the Sinai desert. Like, that is the plan, / Egypt or Jordan or whomever will accept, refugees, more Palestinians than those two countries have already received in the long history of the occupation of Palestine. So, like, it's hard truth to point this out, but it is very obnoxious and stinging when you see things like Representative Al Green filing impeachment articles against Donald Trump for his comments that the U.S. would take over Gaza. And you're like, okay, Rep. Green, I agree Trump should be impeached over these comments. I agree he should be impeached. He shouldn't have been able to run for president in the first place, according to the Constitution. But the fact that you got all this smoke, in addition to so many Democrats, both elected officials and elitists and media figures who have all this smoke for Donald Trump, they're finding it now, had no smoke for Joe Biden, is exactly what folks like myself, who once again libs, yes, voted Kamala Harris and tried to get everyone who's listening to my voice to vote for Kamala Harris, and you know it because people are mad at me over it, we're saying that this administration is not actually serious about a real lasting peace. They've said that Hamas has no future for Gaza, effectively buying the Israeli line, hook, line, and sinker, saying that Gaza cannot exist with Hamas going forward. And lo and behold, it took Donald Trump's effing administration to come into power for a ceasefire to actually be signed. And sure, the Biden administration maybe was a third in that thruple of an agreement, but they had always been weak on this and always been genocidal if not outwardly, covertly saying these exact same things. So Trump has less sheen, and it is demonstrably worse to have no sheen on it and to be like, threatening to rescind any money to Jordan or to Egypt in exchange for them allowing you to or helping you to ethnically cleanse Gaza. That is worse. But it's also kind of a continuum of the same stuff that we were seeing under the Biden-Harris administration, and sadly, not enough of a change from what we saw in the Harris campaign. So it's a hard truth, but there it is. So I'm glad people have smoke now, but let's continue to have that smoke for all politicians, regardless of their party, and especially if they're taking money from the Israeli lobby. You guys, obviously, before I bring in Nato Green, I have to let you know that sometimes in the middle of the night, I have little nightmares. Last night, I had a nightmare that I was touring a house and to buy, one can dream, and that it was haunted. And it was like very scary. I have this like recurring dream of a haunted apartment. Anyway, the point is this: I couldn't get back to sleep because that's how my brain works. So what I did was I had half of a goodnight gummy from Sunset Lake CBD, which has CBD, CBN, and a little bit of THC in it. And it was perfect. In half an hour or less, got me back to sleep. Sunset Lake CBD, a proud sponsor, I think proud, of the Bituation Room podcast. Craft CBD, vertically integrated, regeneratively farmed, awesome labor practices. Love everything about this company, especially their products, smokables, gummies, tinctures, chocolates, coffee, all the things, lotion, sunsetlakecbd.com. Coupon code FRANTIFA for 20% off your entire order. Patrons get 25% off. So look out for that, patrones. But thank you so much for being a sponsor, and hope everyone is enjoying their relaxation, as it were. And now let me bring in, he's a labor organizer. He is a dad, and he's a stand-up comic. Please welcome my good friend, finally back, Mr. Nato Green. Nato.
What's up?
How are you doing, buddy? I don't think we've spoken since, the regime has taken hold.
Yeah, it's not good, dog. It is not good. Although, there's a way, like, I feel like I was more anxious before Trump got reelected than after.
Really?
The anticipation was getting to me.
Right.
And
like the
and
lame
like
duck period, or before he was even
just
elected?
just the whole prior to election day.
Okay.
And there was some hope that we could have averted this. It's the hope that gets you, Francesca.
Versus like, yes, this is what we deserve, waking up every day.
Yeah. So like the anticipation and uncertainty made me very anxious. And now that we've just settled into the unraveling of all good things, and the accelerating polycrisis, I feel like I can find my wavelength.
I think Kate Aronoff tweeted something like, accelerationists must be so hot right now. They must be just like, yes,
it's our moment. So, it's fucked up. And it's also like, like I am, I work with like a very large union, and we do great work, and yet it feels so that like changes people's lives, and yet it feels so small and inadequate in the scope of what is in front of us.
Yeah.
So, but
is this what are you bitching about? Let's roll this into something you might be bitching about.
Well, so since I haven't been on for a bit, I do have something that like I have something that's sort of related to the sort of postmortem on the election, and I haven't gotten to get it off my chest.
Please.
So, which is like, and I think you and I have talked about this over the years, which is that like Obama was elected off of the anti-war movement.
Yes.
And Joe Biden was elected because of the Black Lives Matter movement. Like those, like we saw it in the polling that people who were protesting against racist police violence came away more excited to vote for Joe Biden. And the fact that the Democrats keep failing to learn the lesson, and in fact, so so the thing that I want to bitch about is how, like, the it's not just that the country swung to the right, but like as someone from San Francisco, like there's all these Democratic cities that have historically voted for 80-20 for Democrats, and the vote collapsed, and I think in part that was because of the cities, like the Democratic leadership of those cities running away from the Black Lives Matter movement and
Yeah.
running away from the pro-Palestine movement, and like going out of their way to say we're using, as my mayor did in San Francisco, like the phenomenon of the like pro-landlord, pro-cop,
Yeah.
anti-tax, anti-renter, anti-union, anti-homeless, Democratic, often Black urban mayor of a Democratic city, like that and I feel like we need to recognize that for the ruling class in cities, when Trump was first elected, there was this conversation on the left about municipalism and how like the cities could become these like laboratories of left experimentation because they were Democratic strongholds, and most of the economy is in Democratic cities, etc. And like the ruling class can't just come out and say we need to shred taxes because we want more money. So instead we got this like whipped up frenzy about shoplifting at Walgreens or whatever the fuck that became the wedge to roll back social progress.
Right.
And Democrats were completely complicit in it in the last 4 years, and that's part of what got us here.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's right. And I think that then you see like the real deal of Donald Trump, who's like, well, I just think shoplifters should be like shot, or like I think drug addicts should be like Duterte style, like imprisoned. What about that? What about homeless people dying?
Like the mayor of San Francisco and the governor of California, both Democrats, literally went to the fucking Kavanaugh Supreme Court for support on their ability to like fuck with just inflict cruelty on homeless people.
Yep.
And then are confused about why people don't trust Democrats.
Yes, exactly. I mean, they don't trust themselves. Meanwhile, they sold all Palestine protesters down the river, instated mask bans. I mean, I truly think someone out there must have been smart enough during COVID, when there was like anti-maskers and psychos, to be like, the only way you could get people to ban a mask is, and like think it through, if it was related to some kind of protest movement, or some kind of, as you call it, like, scarf wear. Like it's just too perfect. They handed the right this victory. And I think we're going to talk later about how flat-footed they have been as leaders in this. And like, to me, Nato,
give it up for a movement that accessorizes, though, for real.
Exactly. I mean, look, this is my thing about movements, is I feel like giving Obama the victory, giving Biden the victory, and doing a lot more than that, obviously. But like, we've done the work. The people have done the work. They've shown you what they would like, and they've demanded it, and they've helped and propel you to power. So what the fuck have you done? Nothing.
It reminds me, like of years ago, there's a movement elder that was said to me that every significant political current will find an electoral expression, but not the other way around. And so like, that there are people that, that there's this narrative about like, this is what American politics is, but at the ballot box, there's a binary, often there's a binary choice. You vote for this candidate or that candidate. And so like we don't know what the politics are if there's not a vehicle, if there's not a vessel, in the form of a candidate for those politics to be expressed through.
Which I think is a short-sightedness of like how we're going to win. We definitely need things and structures and institutions beyond electoralism. But let's get into a new segment.
Militant trade unions.
Yes, and we'll talk about unions in a little bit. I'm very excited to talk to Nato about the Elon Trump takeover. But first, Nato, a new segment I'm calling Orange Man Bad. Gotta let it play out a little bit. This week in Orange Man Bad, Orange Man and his administration now openly ignore federal judges who've ordered him to restore federally frozen funding. So that's where we're at. Orange Man signs an executive order banning paper straws. Thank fuck. Orange Man now orders the Treasury to stop minting the penny, which means that isn't like 1 penny worth a nickel, at least at this point. Just like stockpile pennies, dog. See, it's crypto and pennies. Orange Man has lifted a ban on foreign bribery, because of course he has. Orange Man also signed an executive order banning trans athletes in women's sports. Orange Man wants to eliminate FEMA. Caving to Orange Man's wishes, Google has changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America and has removed Black History Month and Pride Month and other holidays not dedicated to straight white men from its calendar. And finally, Orange Man says that Vice President J.D. Vance is not his successor. No. He's a great guy, but no. And that has been Orange Man Bad. There's no punchlines to Orange Man Bad. It's just all bad, Nato. And there's a song. I hope you're enjoying it.
I'm okay with the penny thing.
Wow. Here's my only thing about all this. It's like, can they at least come for daylight savings? In all of this shit, the slash and burn, you telling me daylight savings is untouched? Come on. I really don't want my days to end at 3. It's very depressing and difficult. But yeah, okay, you got some penny hate. I feel that.
I'm in of the things that Trump is like, fine, you can have the pennies. I'll throw him a bone. Also, can I just say, for the people who are watching the stream, I don't know if this is as apparent to you, but between our natural genetics, Francesca, and the lighting, I just feel like it's really quite stark to me how much better your skin is than mine. I feel like our faces side by side. I just feel like I look like Steve Bannon next to you.
You look beautiful. Thank you. You just need a ring light at work, dude.
And like a much better like lotion routine, or something, because I just feel like I look.
I'll make you some of my eye cream. I make my own eye cream, actually.
You're out there freebasing eye cream.
Out there freebasing eye cream.
Yeah.
But okay.
Did I mention that I had a cancer scare recently, and so that's why I'm like all fucked up looking?
No, you did, but now I feel we have to talk about it. But you're good.
I'm fine.
He's fine.
I'm not fine, but I don't have cancer. But I learned the hard way that I didn't realize. Somehow I didn't put it together until it was actually happening. That a biopsy is where they cut off part of your body from the inside and then pull it out. And so when that was happening, they were like, "You're going to hear a clicking sound," and then the clicking. It was like, "That's not a clicking sound. That's someone firing a staple gun up my asshole."
Please use the technical term.
Yeah,
stapling my asshole. I'm so sorry, Nato. I'm glad you're okay. Let's get into This Is the Week Where. Hey, this is the week where, since we have our union organizer on, Elon and Trump's attacks on the federal workforce is really being interpreted as an attack on workers. 3 million federal workers around the world. It's no wonder that they're also, Elon and Musk are targeting labor rights and the right to organize. Trump ousted the former head of the NLRB and then also fired one of the senior officials, Gwynne Wilcox. And so now NLRB is completely useless as an agency. They don't have quorum. They don't have enough people to function because they're not being staffed properly. DOGE, or DOGE as I'm calling, DOGE is also targeting the Department of Labor and recently got access to all Department of Labor information, which a judge ruled was like chill. A federal judge ruled that Elon Musk-led DOGE service can access Labor Department data on millions of Americans, marking a setback from unions that sought to block DOGE's work. Did I say DOGE? I meant DOGE. I think DOGE is the way I'm going to call it. Erica Groshin, a commissioner of the Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics during the Obama administration, said there's a danger in granting DOGE access to BLS data, which tracks many economic indicators and often moves financial markets. But that's not all, because there's also an inspector general at the Department of Labor. You know, like normally looks over waste and abuse and fraud. All these inspector generals have been fired, including the National Labor Relations Board as inspector general. The board has 17 open investigations against Elon Musk's companies, Tesla and SpaceX, for alleged unfair labor practices, safety violations, and discriminatory work practices, which include like using the N-word, not hiring Black people, on and on and on and on. NATO workers, and this I think is really important to know, and you can tell you, then I want you to take it from here, but federal workers are not going quietly. The largest union of federal workers, American Federation of Government Employees, held a rally in DC today. They've seen its ranks grow in 5 weeks by 14,000 people joined. They're also suing AFGE and AFSCME are filing lawsuits against the government who are making it easier to fire civil servants. They're suing on these buyouts. Apparently 60,000 workers of the 3 million have taken buyouts. They're calling it illegal, of course. Then American Federation of Teachers, National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association, International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers or Machinists, and the National Federation of Federal Employees filed suit against the Treasury that the Treasury has disclosed contents of the government system that includes records on Americans' tax refunds and Social Security benefits. Also, they are suing, claiming that the Department of Ed is allowing DOGE to get access to student loan borrowers' information, and on and on and on. But it's NATO, it's like, it's when Trump has been in office to try to break things that we start to like wake up to said things being important. I think you have a joke, something along the lines of like, like Russia can have our democracy, we weren't using it anyway, or something, when you don't like use it or lose it kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of nice to see like AFGE and these federal unions like standing up for themselves, because truly they are the only ones who can and will.
Yeah, I mean, uh, it, I work for a public sector union, and I lead collective bargaining. So we have about 68,000 members with 175 contracts, mostly local government workers, cities and counties all across Northern California. And so we have maybe 10,000 workers in the private sector and are affected by the National Labor Relations Board. And I've been in the labor movement for 28 years, and the Biden NLRB was the best thing about the Biden administration from my perspective. Like, Jennifer Abruzzo, who was the general counsel for the Biden NLRB, issued these like directives, and the nature of labor law historically is that the federal government would sort of like open a door, and then workers would push through it bigger than expected. And so Abruzzo would sort of announce these things, and we just ran with it and like didn't wait for it to work its way through the courts. And so the and the other thing that is like the most palpable change was that new elections for union representation under Biden went up, I want to say 85% or something.
Wow.
That there was this huge surge in new representation elections, and critically, like the time period got cut way down. So like historically, I've seen in the 3 decades of my career, there were times where like a group of workers would want to file to have a union election, and the employer could like tie them up in court for 3 years of hearings,
Right.
to prevent them from even getting to a vote. And that sort of like, from what I saw, pretty much stopped under Biden. And so we were able to get to elections much more quickly but at the same time, like, the NLRB has always been a frustrating agency for me. I've probably filed, thousands of unfair labor practice charges in my career. And, other than
That's
around,
just around stand up
yeah,
and like the conditions.
the conditions to stand up. For some reason, it didn't work. And, I only actually got to a hearing once,
Yeah.
in years. So like, just to give you, and I say that like, not because the agency is not important, but it's not like the way that that Doggy and the right wing people talk about the oversight of regulatory bodies is like, the NLRB is like actively palpating Elon's prostate on a daily basis. The bar of what a company has to do for federal agencies to get involved is so fucking high, and they have such a like unreasonable workload, and there's been so many years, like, they're big, but there's still not enough funding for all the work that they have to do at
Yeah.
every federal agency, and so there's always a backlog, and there's always like, so they're not really aggressively pursuing anything but the most serious cases, and
Which is
so
crazy that there's 17 out against Elon's companies.
yeah, right. I mean, that's how bad it is.
Right.
And so, I've been talking to like other, the staff of our union and other lead bargainers within SEIU about like what it means to sort of Trump-proof collective bargaining. Like, what do we need to do in our bargaining process so that be fighting about directly with employers so that that we don't have to rely on the NLRB. And I think, I am excited that unions are leading the charge on legal challenges to these Trump orders. We are probably going to join some of the legal challenges on some of the sanctuary policies,
Yeah.
to ruin the lives of our immigrant community members. But I think pretty squarely, like, I think, a lot of unions are realizing that in the next 4 years, the question of like political strikes and illegal strikes have to be on the table for unions.
Yes.
That we're going to be like pushing the boundary of what is historically legal and appropriate in order to challenge, in order to survive.
Right.
And in fact, like, the way that the labor movement was small when we did the things that we did that got us big. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, I was just talking to my children at the dinner table, typical Green household dinner table conversation about the Ludlow massacre and like,
Yes.
and about the history of Pinkertons. There was a time when, the National Guard was routinely deployed to gun down striking workers.
Yep.
And workers took action and beat that back and built the labor movement and built, like the baby boom and the American middle class on top of that. And so if that's what we're heading back to, that's what we're heading back to.
I mean, I remember when I feel like you were on, or we were talking about like the Janus decision and, getting rid of like automatic dues collection from unions, which is a major driver of their power and being able to function. And the Janus decision, I feel like you or other organizers were saying maybe it's like a good kick in the teeth for unions and not having the NLRB to rely on, although it is wildly dangerous, is like, maybe that is a good thing to what you're saying to get back to some of this militancy and to stop like, and I want to ask you about other union leaders, but I don't know, maybe there's an argument there.
Yeah, well, I mean, so there's an important sort of legal note about the NLRB, which is, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. There are these cases winding their way through the courts, challenging the constitutionality of the NLRB entirely, and saying that the entire thing is unconstitutional. And a lot of people are afraid about that. And if the entire NLRB is unconstitutional, then it really changes the game because because the NLRB, the federal government has preempted labor law from going to the states. And so what it means is that California could pass its own collective bargaining laws that are better than the NLRB, which we already have in the public sector in California. And so Democratic trifecta states can create, where most of the economy is, can create their own labor law structures that are stronger than what has historically been done by the NLRB. And, I think the right may regret opening up that door. The other thing that I said about Janus, when we talk about the sort of open shop environment, the Janus decision in 2018 made open shop national in the public sector, but it was already legal in the private sector in a bunch of states. And one of the strongest unions in the country is the Unite Here, the hotel and restaurant employees, what they call the culinary union in Las Vegas.
Right.
That with no, they've been open shop forever, and the reason that Nevada elects Democrats to the Senate and has been a blue state is because of the culinary union. Full stop. That they built, that like they have something like 50,000 union members on the Las Vegas Strip in casinos. You and I talked to some of them while you were on your way to the strip club.
Oh yes.
And they and they pull hotel workers out of the casinos by the hundreds to go door to door in working class communities in Nevada every election. And they've demonstrated that it can be done in incredible hostile political conditions,
Right.
and you can still win. So they lit the way for all of us, and we can learn those lessons and apply them everywhere.
Open shop, just to clarify, is when there's like people who are part of a union and people who are not. Is that correct? In one.
That's right. So the contract, I mean, this is like we were talking about AFGE. So the contract covers all of the workers who are represented, and the union has an obligation to represent all of the workers who might have complaints under the contract, but not everybody is compelled to be a member of the union.
Got it.
So the unions and emergency rooms are the only services that are provided by private entities that are legally required to provide the service, whether people pay for them or not. So.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. And I wanted to ask you, because I had Bill Fletcher on recently, and he was saying that he was pretty upset that, like, Sean Fain, after, talking a big game about like fighting the right and whatnot, and like, general strike 2028, which would be great, also is like, we're willing to work with Trump. And granted, this was 2 weeks ago, so this was before a lot of the worst of doggy like came to pass. And it, so who knows? I was checking out Fain's like Twitter. Shit is very quiet lately. But Teamsters head Sean O'Brien was also sort of reamed for this, working with the right. And yet, I don't know how. I'm not willing to be so. I'm not the head of a union, so I'm not willing to be super draconian about like, I don't think that you should work with, whatever, a senator on like a good piece of legislation. But where do you fall on all this? Like, what do you think about this, like working with Trump? Fletcher was like, they don't want us. Why would we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a Samuel Gompers, who founded the AFL-CIO, or the American Federation of Labor, said we have no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And so, like, Sean O'Brien like did some weird stuff. Sean Fain, I saw the thing that he said about working with Trump, and it didn't seem sincere to me. It felt rhetorical, and in the sense that. And this comes up not just with Trump. I mean, I've dealt with this with Democratic politicians in California, where I think I think we need to establish that labor won't uncritically support any Democrat. And I think we need to make demands of all politicians and let all politicians fail to meet those demands and then attack them on that basis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's completely appropriate for the leader of the United Auto Workers to say, all right, motherfucker, if you want to make America great again, here's what that means to us. Here's the things that we need. And Trump is not going to do it. And then the UAW, who certainly has members who voted for Trump and who need to bring those members along, can go back to those members and be like, look, guys, we tried. And, here's what they did.
Yeah.
That I think of all organizing is essentially like brokering a coalition between the moderates and the militants within your group. And the moderates need to learn the hard way that moderation isn't going to work before they're ready to become militant.
We are. There's a lot of moderates learning the hard way. Nato, thank you for that.
Fortunately, that's on the Green family crest, the hard way.
Just someone like, why? How is it represented? We'll think about it later. I do want to see that crest.
I one of my children has a sweatshirt that says "Fight everyone, do it the hard way," with this great illustration. I'll send you a picture. It's fucking awesome.
That's amazing.
My brother got it for her.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I'm super happy to welcome to the Bituation Room for the first time, hopefully not the last time, New York State Assembly member who represents Queens and a Democratic Socialist, part of the DSA, who is now currently running for mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. Welcome, Zohran. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by, Nato. Zohran.
Hey,
how's it going?
His skin is so much better than mine too. What is your skincare routine, Zohran?
Yeah. For number one, what's your skincare routine?
Yeah, Albany water 3 times a week. Recommended.
Oh,
Yeah.
heard. Yeah.
Oh, like jumping in it? Damn, this sounds
No. This is just the one of the few upsides of spending half the week up in Albany each week.
I see. Right. Zohran, it's very serendipitous that you're here today after the news broke last night that Mayor Adams's bribery charges are going poof. He again has federal charges of conspiracy, bribery, solicitations from foreign governments, mostly Turkey. This is, by the way, the Istanbul of podcasts. I want you to know that the Arbitration Room. You good. This is really the Istanbul of podcasts. But Zohran, what is your reaction to the DOJ dismissing these charges against Eric Adams? They can be brought again because they're dismissed without prejudice. This entire letter says that the charges were politically motivated by the Biden administration, who was mad at Eric Adams, and that Eric Adams needs to be free so he can help round up New Yorkers who are undocumented. But tell me your reaction to this, and maybe then what it means for your race.
I think it's the conclusion of something that we've been seeing over many months, which is Eric Adams being willing to sell the city out for a pardon. And we have seen month after month that has meant turning his back on immigrant New Yorkers, on trans New Yorkers, turning his back on the laws of New York City, specifically the sanctuary city laws that we have, going so far as to tell city officials, do not criticize Donald Trump or his administration and do not enforce our sanctuary city laws. And that has, led to thousands of students not attending school out of a fear of whether or not they could be picked up by ICE within a New York City public school, something that is against New York City law. But Eric Adams has been willing to sell out almost everyone, it seems, in the pursuit of this pardon. And for him, it's worked. But what we've seen is that for the rest of the city, the question is at what cost? Because he has been willing to sacrifice almost everyone at every turn. And now we have an opportunity on June 24th to say that though Eric Adams may not be going to jail, he shouldn't be going back to City Hall either.
So what does this mean for you and your race? I want to talk to you obviously more about the vision that you're presenting for New York, which is desperately needed. But does it what does it mean for you and the rest of the folks who are running in this race? It feels like the hand of the president, the DOJ the thumb is on the scale. Does it galvanize Republican New Yorkers? Does it mean Mayor Adams is going to switch parties? How are you thinking this out in terms of how it's going to play?
Honestly, I'd be a fool if I tried to predict what Eric Adams did next, because I think that for him, all options are always on the table. But I think that what this decision by the Trump administration has shown New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs is just how bankrupt our current city leadership is in this moment. And I think, sadly, for many people, they have felt this betrayal before when it comes to electoral politics, when it comes to the Democratic Party. But the level that we're talking about with regards specifically to corruption and ethics, it's just so naked that it has inspired quite an immense amount of disgust across many, many New Yorkers across the ideological spectrum. And people are quite hungry for a different style of politics, one that is putting working class New Yorkers at the center of it, as opposed to willing to sacrifice them in the pursuit of personal gain and personal favor.
Can I ask a question? So you're a DSA guy, is that right? So this is a 2-part question.
Member of New York City DSA, endorsed by New York City DSA.
Awesome. So my question is what are the sort of, there's Trump obviously playing a role, there's Eric Adams, and then is there going to be some other developer, landlord, Democratic candidate who's running for mayor? And then the second part of the question is how does the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon shed light on the current politics in New York City?
I don't think I'm going to have an answer for the second part of the question, but on the first, I can't think of a better candidate for landlords and developers and institutional and establishment politics than Andrew Cuomo. And that is somebody who continues to hover over the race. That is someone who I expect at some point will be declaring his candidacy to be the mayor of New York City. But he knows just as well as we all do that the longer that he is in the limelight, the longer he has to answer for his record. And so he's postponing that announcement of his candidacy until the last possible moment. And in the hopes that by giving himself the shortest possible runway, he'll have to answer the fewest amount of questions. And
Sure.
I'm honestly quite excited by the prospect of reminding New Yorkers that so many of the things that are causing people anxiety in this moment, whether it's their inability to afford basic goods or their lack of feeling safe across much of New York City, a lot of it stems from policy decisions that Cuomo took year after year after year as the governor of the state.
It's just so sick. Like Cuomo sees Trump's reelection as like, it's my turn. You know what I mean? Like he's just these slimy ass, like, and again, the anti-Trump fake resistance politics. Like, I'm so disappointed by how Democrats are not fighting. But if you're gonna fight, like, again, just in the Cuomo way, just, in these performative ways, it's so awful. No, you're thinking of the governor.
Okay, Cuomo's are like Skarsgård. There's like 50 of them.
The political Skarsgård.
Yeah, the Skarsgårds of politics.
If Skarsgård defunded the MTA and cut CUNY and did it all, that
wasn't he Harassy? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah,
that same guy.
Yes, he was. This is someone who was named as having harassed and assaulted more than 10 different women and resigned in disgrace just a few years ago as a result of allegations building on allegations, which were themselves only a few months after there was a massive outcry as to his nursing home policies, where he forced nursing homes to admit patients without care for whether or not people had COVID or not. And there are so many New Yorkers who lost their parents, their grandparents, because of Cuomo's policies which were driven by a desire to paint an artificially rosy picture of New York that he could then use to sell a memoir that he was writing using public funds, a memoir that he received a $5 million advance for, but a memoir that many people have never read.
I'm not hearing the part that you think the voters won't like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what I'm saying is like the big gambit is like, woke is dead / women who don't want to be assaulted. So it's my turn again. But I want to talk about you and your turn, Zohran, because I do feel like beyond Eric Adams's, bribery charges and all this, like it's the same way that Trump's, corruption papers over what is a deeply sick and twisted, I think, agenda for the country. And I do think that Eric Adams's agenda is reactionary and has been. So, in terms of adding police to subways and public spaces and shutting down public libraries and schools, what has been the biggest failure of the Adams administration for you, and what's your counter vision? Like, what do you see that New Yorkers are really hungry for?
I think the biggest failure of the Adams administration has been that it has taken almost every opportunity to exacerbate a cost of living crisis that has pushed New Yorkers to the brink. This is an administration that has the power to set rents for close to 2.5 million New Yorkers. It runs the Rent Guidelines Board, composed of 9 appointees. The mayor picks each one of them, and every year they decide how much, if at all, rents are going to go up. And under the previous mayor, there were 3 years where the rents were frozen. Under this mayor, we've seen a rent hike every single year, the likes of which we haven't seen since a Republican was running City Hall. When Con Edison applied for permission from the state to raise New Yorkers' gas and electric bills by close to $70 a month, the mayor signed on in support. When the mayor saw the power of setting the water bill for New Yorkers, he raised it to the highest amount it's been in 13 years. I mean, this is a guy who has even ensured that chicken and rice at halal trucks across New York City is becoming more and more expensive because he refused to issue the permits that would actually make that food more affordable. It's a man who's addicted in many ways to making a crisis that much more unbearable for New Yorkers. And the way that I see our campaign as being an answer to it is that at its core, we're fighting for a more affordable New York City. At its core, we're saying that for all the dreams that brought people to New York City to call that, that city their home, they are not able to even spend a minute of the day thinking about that dream because they're worried about whether they can afford their rent, their Con Ed bill, their childcare, their groceries, their Metro card. And our campaign is built around proposals that can actually get them back to that dream by affording these basic staples of life, by freezing the rent for those 2.5 million New Yorkers, by making the slowest buses in the country fast and free, by delivering universal childcare, and by creating a city-run pilot program of city-owned grocery stores that would guarantee lower prices, showcasing
I love that.
City government can actually make people's lives easier, because right now all city government looks like is a way that people can enrich themselves. And we need to see a fundamentally different approach to government. And I think, as you were saying, there's a through line between Donald Trump, Andrew Cuomo, and Eric Adams. It is an age where politicians do not believe in consequence. And this election is an opportunity to say that actually we do want a different style of politics. We do want a different style of leadership. And it's one that is direct, explicit, and relentlessly focused on an economic agenda for working class people.
And kind of unique. I mean, like the idea of having subsidized or grocery stores that are working in tandem with one another. I don't know. Speak more about that. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, we've actually seen this in red states in the country, where when there are corporate supermarkets that are uninterested in having a supermarket in a rural area, then there has been a city-run grocery store that has been set up to serve that very population. And Chicago actually conducted a feasibility study about doing this within their city as part of the Brandon Johnson administration. And they found that it was something that they should embark on. And what we see here in New York City is we're already set to give corporate supermarket chains more than $140 million over the next few years in subsidies, just in the hopes that they deliver lower prices. Right. But what we find is that when you give these mega corporations this kind of money, you have no guarantee on the outcomes. And you're not even requiring them to accept SNAP or WIC. And you're really just giving away the farm in the hopes that the food will be more affordable. And what we're saying is we can take profit out of the equation. We can pass on the savings of rent, of property taxes, and guarantee lower prices for eggs, for milk, for bread, which are for many New Yorkers the point of most constant anxiety on a day-to-day basis, because food is not a negotiable. Food is not something anyone should be priced out of. It is essential. And ultimately, that is part of our vision, that anything you need to live a dignified life in New York City, you should have those things. And we understand some of it, but for some reason we don't apply it to everything that is actually needed.
Yeah, I mean, just as a tourist, I used to live in New York, but as a tourist, I understand not leaving your house in New York, because you leave your house and you're like, I might as well just give everyone, my wallet is gone. Just walk out, walk 2 blocks. I'm out $60. How is this possible? What is happening? And yes, and it is a city that I do love, and everyone should be able to, especially the people who live there, enjoy it without that happening.
Obviously, come to my show at Union Hall in Brooklyn on Sunday, March 30th.
Yes, only what are you going to charge? $20? $18.50?
Like $12.
Hell yeah. $12.
And if I was mayor, that would be $10.
I love it.
I will give you $2.
Zohran, I guess I want to ask you, because this economic agenda is really, again, to tie it to the national, cult sort of moment, something that we didn't see out of the Kamala Harris campaign, really focusing on basic needs. You're talking about comprehensive free childcare, obviously rent freezes, free buses, which I think is massive, especially in, a lot of places where subways are not accessible or too expensive and blah, blah, blah. But there is also a reactionary streak in New York City, as well as in LA, where I am, in SF, where NATO is, this reactionary streak that Democrats have played into, that crime is on the rise when it's not, unhoused people should be demonized when they shouldn't, and that somehow we should trust one another less and less and less. And we should sort of look out for our own little fiefdoms and our own little, families. Do you feel like your agenda is one that kind of is a narrative that cuts through that? Or how do you know what I mean? How do you respond to, I think, some of these reactionary tendencies we're seeing?
I think a lot of these reactionary tendencies are ones that are born out of a false sense of precarity. And it's one that has been imposed upon working class people, where you are told that you have a choice between these scraps or these ones. And we've seen under this mayor, he has sought to portray migrants as being the reason that working class New Yorkers who've been here for generations are not receiving the investments that they deserve. When in fact, we're worried about the wrong set of people. In the words of Levin and Cox, we're talking about trans Americans, we're talking about Muslim Americans. We're worried about the wrong 1%. It's a very different group of people that have been profiting from this moment of precarity. And I think what is so exciting about our campaign is that we're making an affirmative case for how we can make life better for working class people. And I think too often all we are posing within electoral politics is a choice between the life that you have and one of change, but that change happens to be actually a life that is worse for most people. But because it represents a break from the moment and the despair that you're living in, it feels as if it's the only alternative you can turn to. And we're trying to show that politics can speak to the urgency of this moment. It can actually return you to what once gave you hope. And it's really just a question of political will in delivering that hope into reality.
Maybe New York City has just become a city of sexual subs that want to be dominated. People are just into pain play.
Wait, I have one, Nato. We got to wrap soon.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I had a real question, but go ahead.
Okay, what I want to ask about ranked choice voting, which I feel like Nato, you'd have something to say about too.
I'll pop off about that. But no, my question is like, what is sort of what is a progressive insurgent field campaign look like in New York City? Like, you're like the I would imagine all of the forces of the real 1% and the people in power are going to be arrayed against you. What does the field campaign look like to break through that?
Let me piggyback that and ask also, how does that play into ranked choice voting strategy, working with other possible progressive candidates for mayor to make sure that Andrew Cuomo nor Eric Adams are there one or two?
Yeah, I think, I've been very clear through this campaign that I'm interested only in critiquing disgraced New York executives, whether the current mayor, Eric Adams, or the former governor, Andrew Cuomo. There are a number of other people running, but the focus has to be on these two executives because they represent the style of politics we so desperately need to turn a page on. And, to your point, Nato, we are going to run this race by building out a campaign, the likes of which New York City politics has not seen. And what I mean by that is we're going to knock 1 million doors by June 24th. We are going to couple that with it being a fully funded campaign because in New York City, we have the matching funds program through the Campaign Finance Board, where New York City will provide an 8-to-1 match for New Yorkers' small dollar contributions between $10 and $250. And ultimately what that means is you can raise $881,000 in matchable contributions, raw dollars. The city will give you $7.1 million. So ultimately, when big real estate comes and spends a couple $1 million against our plan for freezing the rent and building 200,000 new affordable homes and taking on bad landlords, we won't face the kind of ratio that the left typically faces in these races, where you're being outspent 5-to-1 or 6-to-1. Because of that matching amount of money, we will be able to keep it within 2 or 3-to-1, and that's a survivable ratio. Yes. And to the point of ranked choice voting, I think as we get closer to the finish line, I've been made very clear to other candidates, I'm interested in running as part of a slate. I'm interested in cross endorsements because there are many members of my coalition that will be voting for the first time. And they might think that our campaign is the only one they should fill out. And I want to let them know that, in fact, they have 5 options and every single one should be filled out. And none of them should have the names Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo on there.
Yes. Well, we know a little bit about that from SF, but and I think misunderstanding that maybe, and there's a lot of things that were at play when Eric Adams was elected, but I'm so excited for your campaign. Everybody go to Zohran for NYC, ZOHRAN for NYC.com. Get involved. If you're in New York and if you're not, and you just heard the matching donations, like if you are not there, but you want to donate, that sounds pretty dope to me. And thank you so much for coming on and taking the time.
I've already committed $2 in matching contribution, so
It only
I'm
kicks
putting
in
you
at
over the
10.
top. Yeah,
Oh, it kicks in at 10, NATO.
yeah. Oh, sorry. I will give you
I'll give the other
$11. Yeah.
Dusty.
Thanks so much. Take good care, Zohran. And also, I really like your dad. I didn't want to say that while he was on.
Who's his dad?
Mahmoud Mamdani. I'm gonna mess up his name. He's an awesome scholar who wrote the book Good Muslim, Bad Muslim that like all of us anti-war organizers read in 2003 when we were protesting the Iraq War. And we were like, Mahmoud's amazing. And you know, he's got a bunch of other stuff. So he's like the best kind of Nepo baby, but he's not a Nepo baby. I mean, when your kids start doing stand-up, I'm gonna call them out also. So
I mean, well, no, I was thinking about there are a lot of people who like my dad more than me.
Yeah, Zohran and his family must be getting into it at this point. It's like who people love more. But I'm really excited for this campaign. So yeah, man. Meanwhile, SF's got a new mayor, right?
Mm-hmm. Daniel Lurie.
How's that going?
You know, the people of San Francisco were confronted with a diversity of candidates from a billionaire white guy to a millionaire white guy. You know, it's like Lurie won because of ranked choice voting, because there were three centrist candidates running, and he was everybody's sort of least. You know, there were 15 candidates running in the ranked choice thing, and he was everybody's second or third choice vote, and so it sort of put him over the top because he didn't like. And for me, I feel like if we have to fight those politics, I would rather fight those politics in the form of a billionaire white guy than a black woman. Like it's just like it feels more clean.
Right.
So
is Lurie the millionaire or the billionaire?
He's the billionaire. He's the Levi heir.
Yes.
Who, and also he's not like, I mean, he's not beholden to any particular faction of the San Francisco ruling class, because his campaign was basically self-financed. Like, it was very weird voting year. It's like, you know how campaign mailers will like tout all their endorsements, and like and so you can sort of see
it was like money.
Yeah. Well, no, it was like just people he knew. Like, my endorsement, NFL Hall of Famer Ronnie Lott, and band of Ben Folds 5, and some fucking retired port commissioner, and like, Neil of Neil's Tasty Sandwiches on Lombard Street. It was just like a bunch of random ass people. It's like, none of this makes any sense. It was like, and the people of San Francisco, in one voice was like, yeah, I guess so.
Sure.
So
why not?
So,
God.
and then he like he was my third choice, just because I figured he would, because he had never worked before. And so the San Francisco city government is complicated. So I just figured it'd be a few years of like the city attorney going, no, you can't do that. And the controller saying, you can't do that. And the head of human resources saying, no, you can't do that. And then, like, he just like run into all these constraints until he, before he could do too much damage. So, and to some extent that's, and he's just like, not unlike the last few mayors we've had, he's just not a petty, vindictive asshole.
Right.
Like, even though if the politics are bad, he's like not a dick about it, which in some ways
he's
like,
not calling the cops to sweep homeless people where he's having lunch because they're an eyesore.
Right. And he'll like have a pleasant conversation with people who disagree with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I ask you really quickly about, before we go to our next final story, what do you think about Saikat Chakrabarti challenging Nancy Pelosi for her seat?
Well, it's like within local. I mean, we have been wanting a challenger, a viable challenger against Pelosi for a while, and like there are a variety of establishment Dems like Scott Wiener waiting in the wings for her to graciously step aside. And she's going to be dragged out by her fingernails, it appears.
Yes.
But like, you know, we're not specifically.
She's had like 4 hip replacements. You're like, how?
Right. Yeah. They're just giving her extra hips to replace.
Exactly.
But people are not specifically psyched about Psychot because, like, we had, this incredible legislator in San Francisco, Dean Preston, on the Board of Supervisors, who was a DSA guy who fought for like tenant right to counsel and permanent supportive housing and like all these great initiatives. And like his parting gift to us was an audit of police overtime and discovered that revealed. So anyway, Dean got voted out. He was like public enemy #1 for the ruling class, and got voted out by this wetsuit guy candidate that Psychot supported. And so people are like, oh, you're going to be the fucking progressive and then come to San Francisco and run against you're progressive with AOC and then you're going to run against the DSA guy in San Francisco. Go fuck yourself.
He's also part of some like weird tech initiative that is about like, innovating around local government. And that always is like a massive red flag to me. Anyone who's like, I'm going to innovate my way out of, it's like, no, housing, just housing. That's pretty much it. Rent control housing. And
right. It was exactly like the guy, Bilal Mahmoud is the guy who beat Dean Preston. And he like wrote these various, that Psychot supported. And Bilal had wrote these op-eds about different problems with local government. And the problem, like and it was such a like private sector brain of like what the problems that he identified were normal. He was like, did you know that it's like hard for the city to run the city of San Francisco because there's 28 union contracts? And it's like, no, dumbass, that's all government. Like there's a lot of union contracts because everybody's unionized. Like that's not the hard part.
I think yes, private sector brain, private equity brain, which is what the government is going through now, is a really important to point out.
And Lurie just like his, like because he's a billionaire, he can get people on the phone. And so this is like the rap about him is like, Lurie's solution to fentanyl is that he knows a guy. You know what I mean? Like there's a fentanyl crisis and no one else can figure out how to scale up drug treatment at a large scale.
He's like, no, I got it.
Lurie's going to make a few calls to some friends.
Yeah.
And that'll fix it.
Put Shrimp Boy on the case. That's a throwback from the.
Yeah. So I have a personal connection though.
Wait, I want to move on because you have got to go in 15 minutes, Nato. You have a personal connection to everyone, but I wanted to go a little bit there. But I did want to get back to it because we're in this moment right now, Nato, where Democrats are starting to wake up that like people don't want them to just roll over in the face of a massive coup orchestrated by Doggy and Elon, right? So, a week ago, you had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who was confirmed by 15 Democratic senators, including Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Alyssa Slotkin, and others. Bessent got in there and immediately handed the Treasury over to Doggy, and the rest is history. And now they did manage to try to delay the vote on Russell Vought, who's an architect of Project 2025, but they ultimately didn't do much more than like speak a little bit. And then there was no like denying quorum, not that would have stopped Republicans necessarily, but basically they're like, what can we do? We are only elected officials. And that is actually what Hakeem Jeffries, the ostensible leader of Congressional Democrats, effectively said during a press conference. Take a look.
I'm trying to figure out what leverage we actually have. What leverage do we have? They control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It's their government. What leverage do we have?
Now, I know that was difficult to understand that because it wasn't in haiku form or it wasn't in his normal poem, but they might have edited out the rhyming part of it. Nato, what leverage do they have? What are they supposed to do?
We're just in a 2017, 2015 Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
Right, and, like, the majorities in Congress are not that high. So what are you doing? It's not that crazy to pick off some Republicans. The problem is that the Trump administration is not even using Congress to do any of this stuff. It is all executive order and also all illegal because Congress is the only one that has the ability to say freeze federal funds and grants and all this, student loans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Jeffries also this week went to Silicon Valley to basically try to make amends with some of these techies, afraid that they've all gone Trump on him and Democrats, and they still want that money. Now, a Democratic donor advisor said, I think the most unspeakable thing. He said, quote, "There's a significant fear that these tech folks who've been with us for a long time will say, fuck it, we're going with the other guys. These donors are also pissed watching former and current colleagues have unlimited, unchecked power and getting richer off of this, and they're not." Oh, they sad. Why come they get power? I don't have no power. Even though all of the tax breaks that they will be passing will benefit me. And so that is the level of seriousness that we're talking about. What leverage do we have? We just want to go serve our donors and make sure that we can secure their bag so that we can also do their bidding, but better.
Right. So, I joined the Indivisible and the Working Families Party did this big call
Yes,
recently,
I was on it.
along with 50,000 of our closest friends.
Yes.
And it was I mean, for sure things are bad, um, and are going to get worse, and we're under attack and on the defense all over. And what I've been reflecting on is a lot like in in 2017 there was the Women's March, and so there was this big march and people were all excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in December of 2016, we didn't know that the Women's March was about to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that it was going to be as big as it was. Like December of 2016, I delivered a 7-foot styrofoam spine to Nancy Pelosi's office because we were worried about the Democrats not having a backbone. And
now you need to give her a hip.
Yeah, we got in the news, and I'm told that her office still hates me because of that gag. So the I've seen some things that that there's like a huge surge in the phone people calling their senators,
Mm-hmm.
and you're starting to see some Democrats, Brian Schatz, and from Hawaii, and
But it's
Adam
not
Schiff,
actually happening. I mean, I just want to say,
starting to speak out more, and
sure.
to be sure, they're not exercising all the levers of power to block things. And I'm like,
And all the rules in the Senate that there are, you can just like drum up and just be like, oh, sorry, according to your rule book, blah, 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 blah. And then like everyone has to, whatever,
right.
stand on one leg and recite the Pledge of Allegiance backwards.
Yeah. I mean, and certainly like, if nothing else, even if they couldn't even, the articulating a coherent alternative vision and campaigning around it, and like going after, like drawing blood in the polls, to move public opinion. Like Trump is still affected by public opinion,
Yeah.
to be sure.
I mean,
So,
you've got Dr. Phil out on these ICE raids, and I'm like, that's at once obviously hilarious and disgusting. But I would like to see Democrats on, defending people from ICE raids, talking to immigrants, humanizing them. Like that's something they can do. They can win these messaging campaigns in addition to trying to block what the right is doing. I will say
there is like an argument that I've heard starting to circulate about some specific leverage that the House Democrats have on the debt ceiling, which is the debt ceiling. There needs to be a vote in March to increase the debt ceiling, and Trump wants it. Trump doesn't want to preside over shutting down the government, and as we have seen, Speaker Johnson can't do that kind of thing without Democratic votes.
Right.
And so there's a conversation about like what concessions could Democrats demand that are substantive, like shut down DOGE and DOGE and get Musk out of the White House.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to,
Yeah, Musk has got to be gone. I think that's the demand: is Musk is gone. Musk is out of here. And apparently he can only be like a special government employee for 130 days, which is also wild because the damage you can do and has already been done in 130 days is just insane. I love Indivisible and I'm not knocking them. I really appreciate all the work they do. It's just really funny. I rolled up very late to one of the demos and like they wrapped in 30 minutes and everyone went home. And then like I was on like this like text chain and one woman was like, sorry, I couldn't make it. Oh, silly sourdough. And I was like, we're so fucked. This woman didn't come because her sourdough, needed tending to. And I'm just like, Nato, we're so not ready. We're so not ready for this. And it's going to take a lot more.
Have you ever made sourdough?
I know. I have not. I've made a baby.
Yeah. Sourdough is like a baby that's made of mold.
Okay, before I let you go, really, really quick, Jerry Connolly also, again, head of the Oversight Committee, which could have been AOC, had this to say. He really thinks he's crushing it. And this is my favorite when, like, certain people, usually older people, just like Schumer going like, we will win. Like when people think they're crushing it, but they're very much not. Here's Connolly saying there's no mandate, or there is kind of. Trump does have a mandate, just not that mandate.
The public did not give Trump a mandate to dismantle the whole chunks of the federal government. Gave him a mandate to, kick the tires, check the dipstick, and make sure that things are running well and efficiently. In that part, he has a mandate.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have stop buying into the mandate language. He's like, it's just the Jiffy Lube. Doggy is the Jiffy Lube of government. It's just like, you already, even just saying the word mandate, buying into the framework of mandate, which is a right-wing concoction, as a guy who got 49% of the vote, is bullshit. So
I'm sorry. What is the dipstick of government in this metaphor?
I don't know. Just to make sure everything's running. Hey, okay, you go on your way.
A mandate to make sure everything's running. What a weak ass mandate.
Like exactly. That is just being in government, dumbass. Like that is just being the executive. Like. NATO, we're so unprepared. We're so unprepared. But I feel you, and I know we should remain hopeful. I'm feeling very despondent. So I'm glad I caught you on an upswing. Maybe next time I'll catch you on a downswing. In the meantime, where can people catch you live at Union Hall in a little bit?
Yeah, I'll be at Union Hall Sunday, March 30th, and
nice.
At the Comedy Studio in Boston on Friday, April 4th. If you're out there, or Mr. Nato Green on Instagram, or Twitter, but Nato Green on Blue Sky.
Nato Green on Blue Sky. Do I follow you? I hope I do. All right, dude. Thank you so much for being on. I miss you, and come back real soon. You're the best. Love you, Nato.
I'm coming to LA this weekend.
I know. Holler.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And thank you all. I'm actually. Everyone needs to go see Nato live. Go see him live, please. March 30th, Union Hall. Come see me in Sacramento with Matt Lieb I already said that, on March 16th. That's a Sunday, March 16th. I'll be there. Sacramento Punchline. Get your tickets, francescafiorentine.com, or wherever you are listening or watching this. Let's read some comments and then F off into this good afternoon. Thank you so much to John Pompajohn for your super sticker. Appreciate you. Benjamin Morrill gifted a sub. Thanks so much. Boston Brian, thank you for shouting out your YouTube channel. We'll check it out. Thank you, Ali Bubby, for pinging me on that. The instructor says Eric Adams won't be reelected for mayor. I predict he will flip and go Republican and try to get some biscuits from Trump. I don't know. Paige and I were having a disagreement earlier. I think he will not be reelected. She thinks maybe he will. But I also think that Zohran, with these really concrete proposals, and honestly, someone who can break through the BS between these like horrible Democrats. I mean, I just don't think Eric Adams is going to win. I think either you're going to get a Zohran or you're going to get some Republican that we don't know about yet, like someone really awful, right? Who hasn't already been tapped to be part of the Trump administration. That's my feeling. 255 AD says, you're going to do another episode of Behind the Bastards? I hope so. I've been hitting them up. Samil Bilchi says, as a Turkish representative in the chat, I disavow these charges being dropped. Thank you. I appreciate it. Daniel Lee, what's up? Daniel says, it's disgusting that in so many major cities, Black candidates are used by private equity and corporations as cover for regressive policies. I think that's very apt. I mean, it reminds you of like AIPAC as well, using candidates of color, to basically go after other people of color, like Arabs and Muslims in their community. Cod Sterling, you have helped Cod to keep the fight, to spirit, to fight back against this tyranny. Appreciate you, Francesca. Appreciate you, Cod. I love that you speak in the third person. Tony Barbosa, yes. Fernanda Torres, let's go. Let's go. Thank you. And the instructor reminding us that Pete Hegseth under fire from Dems over alleged 50,000 or 49,000 emergency paint job for a government home. Where's Doggy? Where's Doggy? They're also figuring out that Robert says Dems are figuring out that there are no rich Russian parliamentarians if oligarchs are in direct control. The Dems can't sell political power to them. Yeah, I mean, this is really kleptocracy at its finest. And so it's like, it's a collect your own billionaire, collect multiple millionaires and just try to ride that to the top. And again, they're playing the same game and they're going to lose. They're going to lose it because Republicans will always be able to play the oligarchy game better, because oligarchy is now hand in hand with fascism, hand in hand with obliterating civil rights, hand in hand with firing 10,000 workers in one fell swoop, like happened to USAID. And so this is a which side are you on moment, and make these senators' lives a living hell, truly, and please, and thank you. And with that, guys, let's get to that fart song, man. You know what? The fart song's been kind of like doing a little number on us lately, And I want to just make sure to shout out all the wonderful people who've joined as patrons of this show. You all know it's been a harder year. There's been some professional disagreements and political disagreements with some former colleagues. And so your money truly is it is very, very needed and necessary, and your hard-earned dollars, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month gets you this shout out. Thank you so much in advance, and let's go. Thank you to the patrons at $10 or more: Tina Godshow, Milo Artie, Andrew Fadner, Amanda McQuaid, Aaron, Derek, Philip Rossard, Thomas Wilson, Adam Schaub, Alex Pierce, Cheryl Saylor, Austin K, Lisa Ta, or Liza, Tim, Rich Rodriguez, Anthony M. Von Lewis. Thank you to Cindy Perry for upping your pledge. Thanks to Manuel Sandoval. What's up, Manuel? Thanks for coming out to see me live. Thank you, Just Julie, for upping your pledge. Jeff Ower upped their pledge. LucyParsonProject.com upped your pledge. Melody Moonfire upped your pledge. Depressed Progressive upped your pledge. Pierce Edmonds upped your pledge. Chris D, Dave Robinson, Lori Williams, Natalie Stone, Kevin Ensminger, Nick Freida, and DL also upped your pledge. Thank you so much. That means the world. And also, we've got Substack members and subscribers, so you get a shout out also. John Kirk, Chase Turner, McCook, Mike Johnson, I hope not that Mike Johnson, and Everything in Change. Everything's changed. Thank you so much for being Substack subscribers. Sorry. I also want to thank James Corello for becoming a new member on YouTube, Eastside Records for becoming a member on YouTube, Richard Greenfield for becoming a member on YouTube. Remember, you get access to all of that bonus content when you do. And thank you so much to Paige Omek, to Maximilian Inhofe. I'm gonna get used to saying his name. To Max, we love you. To Brent Godin, who is working with us now, and to Andy Vasoyan. We're streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Follow the show on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on Instagram at Bitchuation Room. And remember to fight the power, to fuck the patriarchy, to free Palestine. And don't just bitch about it, guys. Be about it. Bye-bye.